evening, everyone. Today on Welcome Back from the Dead, we have Goffman with us. Give him a warm welcome to the 21st century. Glad to be here. So today we'll be showing you footage from millennials who have social media in their lives, and we'll ask you a few questions about how your theories relate to what they have to say. We will be discussing the theories of front stage, backstage, impression management, embarrassment, and role distancing.
I do find the concept of social media to be particularly interesting.
Yes, so first I think I should give you a heads up on the questions we're going to ask. So we asked, what do you think of yourself? What do other people think of you? And how does your social media reflect this? Okay, very interesting. So I'll just show you
A blank slate. Not much personality, but a lot of alcohol.
Sad.
Bloody legend, yeah.
Okay, so can you reflect on how your theory of embarrassment relates to gender, for example?
To be honest, I didn't account for gender when constructing my theory, which describes how individuals employ defensive practices such as humour to protect themselves from losing face. It is interesting to see how males present more straightforward positive perspectives and use humour as a defensive mechanism when they're embarrassed about talking about themselves. In comparison, the females seem to be more open and honest, yet more negative about themselves. They display more shyness to show their embarrassment, a lowering of the eyes, a bowing of the head.
Interesting, yes. So let's have a look now on how students responded to the question, what do other people think of you?
Like to be kind. Hopefully friendly. Hopefully approachable.
Hopefully people think I'm nice.
I hope there's a good bloke.
So how does this question relate to your theory of front stage?
It is essentially asking people to explain how they think their front stage is viewed by others.
So what is front stage?
So in my dramaturgical theory, front stage is how you portray yourself when you know other people are watching. This reflects internalized norms and expectations for behaviour, shaped by the context and the particular role one plays in it. In contrast to backstage behaviour, where one is free of the expectations and norms that dictate front stage behaviour. Many students said, I hope that.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that, which a lot of people believe is important to maintain a humble front stage disposition as they deem this to be likeable. It'd be interesting to see what their reactions would have been if they were answering the same question posed by a close friend. After all, we play different roles or have different faces depending on the context or the person we're talking to.
Mine's very blank. I don't really use it. After like 2 years ago, I realised I felt sad when I was looking at people's photos because they're having a great life.
So both these girls don't engage in social media really. Does this bear any relation to your theory?
This is an interesting example of role distancing, which occurs when an individual intentionally promotes a lack of attachment and commitment to a role, or does not fully engage in a role's performance. Because social media is clearly very prevalent amongst millennials, interacting via social media can be thought of as sort of a role someone is meant to fulfill. Intentionally not posting things, having a blank profile, as you call it, can be thought of as a concerted attempt to not fully commit to the role of engaging in social media.
I'm a very privileged upper middle class, white, probably gay man.
Well, there's a lot of photos of IBs.
I think I'm really into theatre.
So can you give us some indication as to how these responses relate to your theory of impression management?
Impression management is the process whereby a person attempts to influence the perceptions of other people about themselves by regulating and controlling information in social interactions. In the case of these individuals, this is done by regulating and selecting what content to post. For instance, posting theatre content aims to curate the desired identity or front face for others to perceive.
Probably that I'm like a very bright and happy person, which is not always the case.
So what do you make of this idea, for instance, that this girl is not actually as happy as people might think she is based on her social media?
Well, I think this really comes to the crux of my theory about front stage and backstage. Her social media or front stage displays a happy, content individual, whereas it is evident in this clip that her backstage, where she's alone and reflective, is very different. She acknowledges that she's not actually that happy. Hence, there is evidently a disconnect between the presentation of the self in her front stage and backstage.
So I do have separate accounts to portray kind of different aspects.
Could you shed any light on how the response of this last individual, for example, relates to role-playing?
We play a range of different roles depending on interactions. In this case, the girl has created 2 separate Twitter accounts: academic, showing sociology content relating to her role as a student, and personal, showing personal hobbies and interests relating to her role as a friend.
So because people play so many roles, do you think there is a true self?
I argue in my theory that there really is no true self behind the roles. The roles are they're just performed. This idea has been quite controversial when I published it, as it challenged the idea that each of us has a more or less fixed character.
Interesting. Well, that brings us to the end of our program. Thank you so much for being here today, and tune in for another episode